Hello friends! So we had this wonderful bee weekend, second one out of the wonder about the bees, the mysteries of the bees, and we've brought a little honeybee library. I'm going to run you through this. Kindly, Melody and Jante here at Peridor have offered to home this as a small honeybee library, and those who are seriously interested in coming about and looking at one or two titles are welcome to contact them to do so. So one of the very important titles from the history is The World History of Honey Hunting and Beekeeping by Eva Crane. Very academic work in the last century, 20th century, about beekeeping worldwide and its traditional remains, but also historical roots. So, and then moving from history books, there's lots of novels that are, I'm only leaving one, which is Honey and Dust, a travel diary about bees, but there's lots of good novels like The Secret Life of Bees and other. Then here's a little anatomy section. So these are from 1910 and they're about 1930, I think this one is. And these are drawings based on dissection of the honeybee. So dissection of the honeybee, let me see if I find another plate. This is actually how they do it with the microscope and the dissection. But then they have done incredibly detailed drawings and they're very accurate until this day. The only thing which surpasses this nowadays is electron microscope photography. I think this is probably the tip of a feeler of a honeybee. And this is how a feeler is probably rooted in the head, how the antenna is rooted in the head with its articulations in the exoskeleton. So quite interesting. Now moving on to biology, we have a section here. This is Thomas Seeley and this is Jürgen Tautz. This is actually in German. But Thomas Seeley has started working a lot with beehives and has now moved to, partly at least, also tracing bees in the wild and looking at natural bee populations. Same as here, where they look at bees living naturally in trees and in forests. And basically, there is a new approach emerging, which is called Darwinian beekeeping, and which is about leaving bees in nature and knowing they will evolve and adapt to challenges rather better than the monitored colonies, and that for, in their words, preserving genetics, we should care for these feral colonies by not interfering. Then here's very interesting, it's a French book about beekeeping and a 1700s English book about beekeeping, just for curiosity. Then we come to a whole sort of small section about the plight of the honeybee, so vanishing of the bees and More Than Honey. Here is a German book and an English film. Sort of when the bee crisis happened in the West, there was a lot of writing. There's also the really popular one from two Guardian writers. I should have brought that one really. You'll find it. There's good literature on that. But then we have to move on to how to help them. So the first connection is just bees in nature. So insects. There's a lot of good information about other insects. So this is for example, from the Butterfly Conservation Society. And really, don't only focus on honeybees. Have a look around and learn from other groups. This one is a brilliant one. Plants for Bees, a guide to the plants that benefit the bees of the British Isles. It's a guide, like a botanical guide, through the local fauna in relation to honeybees, short-tongued bumblebees, long-tongued bumblebees, and solitary bees. And it really helps the gardener to plant up a very insect and pollinator-friendly garden. Next step then is observation. At the Hive Entrance is a brilliant little book by Storch, a German beekeeper and bee inspector, and who says you don't need to interfere so much with your hives. If you train yourself for flight entrance observation, you can tell most of what's going on by that. But it's an art that is very little practiced. Moving from there, we move into Goethean science then properly, based on observation obviously, two fantastic books. Andreas Oschanter, this one is English, The Metamorphosis, Evolution and Action, and there's a whole section on insect metamorphosis and the honeybee. And this one, Henry Bortuft, The Wholeness of Nature, Goethe's Way of Science, a brilliant, proper scientific account of knowledge, theory of knowledge in modern science, and how Goethean science is a proper acknowledged science by mainstream science. Very good book. And then we move more into the anthroposophical realm. So there is a Varihive Beeking by David Heath. There is Günther Haug, Towards Saving the Honeybee. A very popular one, Michael Weiler, Bees and Honey, now called The Secrets of Bees, which is very much based on the golden hive and Demeter or biodynamic beekeeping with the golden hive. Global Hive, a fantastic book by Horst Kornberger, also two different editions. He really observes evolution of consciousness since the Enlightenment till today, and how the frame hive and this massive interference-based rational beekeeping is an expression of the intellectual reductionist mind, and how the mind has to progress beyond that in order to understand and evolve to sustainable beekeeping. So one example of that, the Sun Hive, an artist's approach from Günther Manke, already I think in the 1970s or 80s, and which resulted in the Sun Hive that you can see over there, and which is promoted in Britain by the Natural Beekeeping Trust, which also promotes other kind of beekeeping like tree beekeeping, but the Sun Hive is definitely one of the very interesting artistic expressions of modern alternative beekeeping. Then Ralph Rössler, who reconnects with the spirit of the earth hives, which is actually also the oldest hive known on the British Isles, coming from the Celtic stream of British culture. Apiculture and the Evolution of Bees. This is a very rare book. You're probably not able to get hold of it. Enzo Nastati, who is a very forward-thinking, biodynamic practitioner who's based in Italy. And then we've got these two books, which are, I think, from the 1930s in Germany, and which have been republished by the Natural Beekeeping Trust. So Eva Thor-Lorentzen, Spiritual Foundations of Beekeeping, and Bees and Ancient Mysteries. Two bees worth looking at, two books, I mean. Then we get to Steiner. So Steiner, obviously, the honeybee lectures itself, with this nice afterwards on Joseph Beuys' art, not by Steiner. But we will soon make a little, we're looking for a lecture from 1905, which is in the German version of it, and which goes back to esoteric lessons, where he gives a meditative exercise and then refers to bees. So I almost see that as the occult schooling for beekeepers. And we will look for an English translation, and if you're on our email list, we will give the link to you soon. And then Man as a Symphony of the Creative World by Steiner gives more of a relationship between nature in general and insects, plants and insects, the butterfly and the flower, but very worthwhile for beekeepers as well. And then we move into a slightly different section. The Shamanic Way of the Bee, as the Simon suggests, is a shamanic writing, but really worth reading. Simon Buxton is a present-day British Isle beekeeper who goes back most to this Celtic stream, which is called Path of Pollen. And it's a very entertaining, but also worth reading, other stream of initiation into the being of bees. And then we've got just a small collection of children's honeybee books. One is actually from Belgium, and these are all published in English. So there are hundreds and thousands of more titles of beekeeping, including in what we've looked at, which are worthwhile reading. But this is just a short collection of ours, which is now at Peridot with Jante and Melody. Thank you. And if you want to visit, we look forward to seeing you.